Breaking news to get to out of the transfer portal. Jackson Arnold from Oklahoma planning on entering the transfer portal. That is per our Matt Zenitz. Some big news for the Sooners there. We were just talking about their new offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, coming in. It sounds like he will have to be working with a new quarterback. But for that, let's bring in our Matt Zenitz, who broke this news here. And Matt, what are you hearing on the Jackson Arnold front?
Yeah, so Jackson met with Brent Venables today and informed Brent Venables and the Oklahoma coaching staff that he's going to be moving on and entering the transfer portal. So Jackson, obviously, just to give a quick background, former top 10 overall recruit, was one of the top-ranked quarterbacks in the 2023 recruiting class, started 9 games this year at Oklahoma, but was an up-and-down year for Oklahoma offensively, was an up-and-down year for Jackson, was benched at one point before reclaiming his starting job, ultimately finished the year on a positive note, but at the same time, this was something that had been a consideration for him in recent weeks and coming out of the regular season. And like I said, had that meeting with Brent Venables today and informed him that he will indeed be entering the transfer portal.
I just want to clarify here because we know sometimes players enter the transfer portal, they come back out, they're just kind of testing their market. But is it this official, a breakup between Jackson Arnold and Oklahoma? You mentioned that conversation that he had with his head coach today.
His plan at this point is to move on.
All right. Are there some schools potentially that we should keep an eye on early on?
Too early to tell, but even with this being an up and down season for Jackson, this is still somebody who's talented enough that, again, was ranked as a top 10 overall recruit going back a year ago. And I would assume that there's going to be a good amount of interest in him around the country. And obviously, we all know the premium that schools place on quarterbacks. And once again, there was talent flashed the end of the year and ended the season, ended the regular season on a positive enough note that I would think we'll have some options, even though they don't have any sort of great list to give you right now. So I apologize for that.
That's all right. It's still very early on in the process. Matt, I'm just asking you the questions that I have. I'm sure our audience has as well. But that's why we follow you on Twitter and we check out your news on 247sports.com. Matt, thank you so much. Speaking of finding his news on the website, we are having a 60% off promotion that is happening only during this show. I know this show's been going on for a while, but guys, we have less than an hour left. So that means less than an hour left for you to take advantage of the promo code NSD to get 60% off all annual memberships. Let's go back to the desk here. We had a little bit of a seat change here. Cooper Patagna is back with us, but I want to start with Huff because Huff, we were just talking about Oklahoma and this offense, the new offensive coordinator. He'll have to work without Jackson Arnold. What's your reaction to this news?
Well, if I'm a Washington State fan, now I start to panic a little bit because with Ben Arbuckle coming from Washington State to Oklahoma, does John Mateer follow? We've already seen precedent last year with Cam Ward leaving Washington State on the news that Washington State would no longer be in the Pac-12. He ends up in Miami, has them in position for a playoff spot until they lose to Syracuse. But now Mateer, he's kind of married to Arbuckle. And so that could be we've already seen that kind of with Washington State before. They got Cam Ward because Eric Morris got the offensive coordinator job for Jake Dickert and brought Cam Ward with them from Incarnate Word. And now we could see Mateer leaving Washington State as a result of a coordinator change. So, they did flip Jet New earlier, who was a commit to Oklahoma State out of the state of Utah. But does this now mean that with Jackson Arnold's departure that John Mateer becomes QB1 target for Oklahoma with his offensive coordinator going there, with Oklahoma clearly needing some kind of spark offensively? If I'm a Washington State fan now, I might need to go on to 24/7 Sports and follow Matt Zenitz to see if the bad news might be coming for them.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Jackson Arnold, where does he fit in the transfer portal? Fortunately, I've had 20 seconds to take a look at that. So I think what we're going to do there, we'll put him as a 90 rating, number 2 transfer portal quarterback in the class behind Connor Wegman, not too far behind. So, that would be ahead of Miller Moss. That would be ahead of Caden Salter. And the biggest reason for that is just he hadn't played a ton of ball, right? He started that bowl game a year ago. Obviously played some games this season. They yanked him from Michael Hawkins. What happens with him? I think that's another storyline there that you could follow. was there a better way for Brent Venables to handle this situation than taking one out, putting the other one in, and now all of a sudden you might not have neither, right? Jackson Arnold's already in the portal. But the biggest thing for him is finding the right fit, and we've seen this already. Jaden Rashada took a redshirt year. We've seen guys go and sit after playing early. Dante Moore with Oregon as well. I think that's what's in line for Jackson Arnold. He needs to find a place, a good fit, sit for a year, regain his confidence, and then find a way to earn that job back, because I think all the reasons that we liked Jackson Arnold coming out of high school at Denton Guyer, we haven't seen any of that at Oklahoma. Now, listen, I've talked a lot about the 3 Ps, which have been, offensive line protection, play calling, and playmakers. Oklahoma went 0 for 3 on that. You want to put a young quarterback in a position to best succeed. Oklahoma failed Jackson Arnold. That's why he's in the position that he's in. He's got to own some of it as well. But it's why we do it, right? I mean, it's pretty interesting. This is a guy that we had as one of the highest rated recruits here in the country just 2 years ago. Now he's in the portal, and he's going to have to find a good spot to get his career back on track.
You mentioned the way that this quarterback situation was handled. Seemingly, they still have Michael Hawkins now. I mean, is that the guy going forward, do you think, for them?
No,
or
I
they're
don't think so. I think Huff said it. I think all eyes are on John Mateer, and John Mateer is an absolute baller. So if you got the offensive coordinator and you got Mateer, if you went in today, he'd be the number 1 quarterback prospect in there. He's a high flyer coming from Washington State. Obviously, we've seen Washington State, unfortunately, for the Cougs fans, produce quarterbacks like Cam Ward, right? Other guys like Mateer, we'll see what happens with him. But in terms of what he brings with his legs, that dynamic is very different. And I think, one, you kind of saw Oklahoma kind of play into a little bit later in the season with Jackson Arnold, getting back to the athlete a little bit. So when you're lacking all those other things, when the protection's not there, maybe you got to build up the receiver room a little bit. What is the equalizer? It's having a dynamic athlete at quarterback that can run around, improvise, do some different things.
I need to stay in my lane, but I did do a Washington State game this year, and so just watching him close up, I mean, I joked with him after the game. His white jersey, was the color of the field. He is one tough kid, and somebody that's incredibly impressive that, the audience might not have seen a whole lot of him being out at Wazoo this season, but has a lot to be excited about if Oklahoma is, in fact, interested in him. But that's usually what we do in the transfer portal, right, is we try to pull on some of those threads and connect the dots there, and that certainly would be a connection there. But man, Jackson Arnold has hit the transfer portal, a fantastic quarterback available for some lucky team out there.